I work for an organisation I set up called the Humane Clinic, and the Humane Clinic is concerned with providing alternative spaces based in psychotherapy ideas that are non-diagnostic and really non-outcome focused. So they are seeking to create environments where people can come and explore their life experiences and decide where their journey goes next. I think the qualities and values of psychotherapy models will be about the quality of the human-to-human relationship and the value of that relationship. I guess I think it's hard to define what models are in psychotherapy and what good models are, and therefore what they might have in common. So the dynamic between the two people has to be at the focus of the model. If models that focus on equality, I think, have a particular value, and distinguish the value of the person in therapy and the therapist. And through that, I would suggest that the values are around the therapist being able to hold a space, being able to create safety and conditions in which a person can work. That's the value of the therapist. The value of the client will be having the knowledge of the challenges and therefore the solutions. How they influence my practice is that I'm very interested in stories. I'm very interested in people telling their stories, people defining and making sense of their own stories rather than the stories people have told them. So that does dovetail with the idea of what are the essential qualities of psychotherapy. And my role as a therapist is to facilitate a person hearing the different stories of their lives and then choosing which story they would like to move forward with, really. I think within that, within defining our own story and understanding the experiences we've had towards what is essentially a good life for a person is often about that person's sense of healing over the stories that they have, and getting in touch with their own realities rather than the realities that have been given to them by others. And so thinking about what all good psychotherapies have in common and how that affects therapy, then it's the quality of the relationship between the two people towards whatever the goal of the person is. My way of working that is to sit with it and sit in it. So I'm very interested how we, as a therapist or nurse, might be able to sit with the discomfort of a person being in an extreme emotion. Because often it's those extreme emotions, extreme realities for people that people find very hard to accept, tolerate, understand, make sense of. That's both for the person in therapy, I think, and the people around them in their support network. So one of the things we can do in therapy when someone's experiencing intense emotion is to be available to sit with them in that space. See if the person wants to explore the intensity more, see what choices a person might have even within that intensity. I think often we might see someone in therapy whose extreme emotion has caused them problems through their so-called behaviour in different parts of their life, but perhaps part of sitting with the intensity is creating an opportunity for a person to see that they can have different behavioural response. These emotions are acceptable within relationship when the relationship is safe, rather than these experiences are unacceptable. My approach is to first accept people's extreme states, extreme emotions as real, valid, genuine, and then to accept them as meaningful responses to life experiences. So if a person hears voices or sees things that I can't see, the importance of psychotherapy is that to accept that doesn't mean we're colluding in it, but it means we're allowing that person to have a valid and legitimate human experience and me to have a different valid and legitimate human experience, but for us to acknowledge that. So my approach to it is to acknowledge the reality and then seek to explore it. Do extreme states, extreme emotions, do they have metaphor, meaning? Do they give us clues as to why they're there? And therefore, how can we make sense of them? So very much similar to the last question, I suppose, where we sit in the spaces that people are in and allow them to move out of them rather than us seeking to move people out of them. I think one of the follies of psychotherapy is to think that we can change a person's state or reality. Opposition to that is the relief and joy at not needing to be the expert of the other person's reality. And in psychotherapy, I think we're afforded the opportunity to do that. And certainly for nurses who've been taught to do task-orientated, goal-orientated, outcome-orientated processes with people or to people, perhaps psychotherapy is a great gift to nurses to be able to explore why they came into this work in the first place and think about what it would be like not to have a task in the face of someone's extreme state or not to have a goal, but simply to allow that person's story to be told in the way it's being told. The lead should come from the person and their extreme state. So it might be that we hear a story in the content of the voices and we might ask the person if they want to explore that story further. It might be that the extreme emotion is underpinned by a set of precursive events and we might ask them if they want to explore that. So for me, one of the important components in psychotherapy, and explicitly around psychosis or mood states, is to focus on how the person wants to explore the state they're in. And I'm reminded of Lang talking about the person who was depressed, and at the end of his session, the person said, "We haven't talked about the depression." And Lang said, "No, you weren't depressed. So we couldn't talk about the depression." And I think there's a parallel there. You know, we can not talk about things when they're not there, and we can talk about things when they're there. And that's perhaps part of psychotherapy. I think change is about a person feeling that they have a sense of autonomy and empowerment about where they would like to be in their life. I think it happens within the relationship of two people or a group of people. My view would be that many people come to psychotherapy because difficulty, harm, damage has happened within interpersonal conflict and relational dynamics, and therefore change occurs in psychotherapy in the interpersonal relational dynamic. So it happens, if you like, between people rather than from one person to another. I think some of the real quality I observe in seeing change in psychotherapy is when people have the opportunity to see themselves and their experience as a reflection of the other person experiencing that, but without the context of the often difficult dilemmas of everyday interpersonal relationships. So the therapist holds a space of open and honest reflection, and that gives the person an opportunity to see how change might be possible. If we move away from the illness and wellness model and we say, what is a good life for you within the parameters of your own life, then we create a new discourse from the offset. And that's a big part of change in some psychotherapies, but not all psychotherapies. And I guess it may be important to distinguish between the more goal-orientated, skill-based psychotherapies and the what I would understand as the core qualities of psychotherapy, which is about meeting a human being. I think psychotherapeutic spaces can be observed to be working when a person can start to tell new narratives around the value of the human encounter, both in the session and, more importantly, outside of the session in the rest of their world, which is the majority of their life, of course. So when people start to describe new experiences and new relationships with people that have had very old patterns, when people start to talk in powerful and conscious ways about the choices they're making, and people are able to step outside of the often stuck experiences, then maybe we could say that psychotherapy is working. One of the challenges, of course, is that in my view, psychotherapy is not concerned with illness and wellness. It's concerned with human experience. And so measuring the benefit or the value of psychotherapy is perhaps naive, but that might be the way we measure it, by seeing the descriptors people give of how their relational experiences in the world have changed.